بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. We always begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who by His mercy and grace and blessings we all are here. And we're able to consciously be an active part of His plan, of His reality. So today we're going to talk very much about this concept of man and creation. In the previous verses, it talked about the nature of how the believer versus the non-believer will react to revelation. And it's just setting the tone for the attitude, right? That if you've seen the miracle, and this is what we talked about before, foundations. If you've seen the miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you've seen who his character was, how he was known, what previous prophets had prophesied about a coming the prophet character. And then you look into the various miracles starting with the Holy Quran and how it challenged the people of Arabia and how they were not able to produce anything like it. And how basically one man who was an orphan, who held probably the lowest place in a noble family, went from saying, I've been receiving this message, and then going through so much difficulty to 23 years later, having the whole entire Arabian Peninsula following his religion. So subhanallah, wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that brings us to the question that Allah is asking us. كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ? In Arabic, when you ask a question, it could have various meanings. There could be various purposes behind asking a question. And so here, it's a question that is rhetorical, meaning you're supposed to think deeply about the question, and then a natural answer will come, and there's only one right answer. It's not seeking information from you, it's helping you to see a reality that you should already know if you haven't thought about it, right? So, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ? How could you reject, how could you disbelieve in Allah? وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا, and you were lifeless. ثُمَّ أَحْيَاكُمْ, or فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. So then He gave you life, then He will cause you to die again, then He will bring you back to life, and you will return to Him. Okay? So the translation we have of this one is, how do you disbelieve in God and you were once non-existent? He then gave you life, then caused you to die, then He will resurrect you again, and to Him you will return. Why does it say non-existent? Because all of the scholars of tafsir are in agreement that the first statement of وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا, usually people think about the term maut as having had life before. So there is a group of scholars who say, because Allah's knowledge is complete and absolute, that indeed we were always there. We just weren't conscious of our existence until He gave us that conscious. فَأَحْيَاكُمْ, then He gave you life. Right? Other scholars saying, no, there was nothing and then Allah created. Right? So one is taking a very deep philosophical angle of understanding the asma of Allah and how perfect they are. And they're saying that whatever Allah knows has always been there, right? And then He chose to bring it into its complete existence. Other scholars are saying, come on man, He's called the Creator. The word creator means there was something that didn't exist and then He brought it into existence, right? So those are two polemic, interpretive ways of looking at it. Bottom line, they're both in agreement that we did not have life and then He gave us life. So that's the first thing to understand. And that's why we say, if we look in the third point here, I think it was Plato or Aristotle, I think, therefore I am. It's a philosophical concept. That's what really puts us into the world that we're in, is that we know. So like plants and animals and rocks, they're not consciously part of creation, right? And so, the reality of the human is that when you're born and as you grow up, you realize self. You become very attached to yourself. Who remembers the famous hadith when the Prophet ﷺ was talking about loving Allah and so forth, and then he asked them, what do you love more than anything else? What did Omar say? Myself. I love myself. Myself is most beloved to me. Omar was just being dead honest. He could say, well, this is, Prophet is asking, so I should say him, But he was being asked what his reality is, and he gave it. And then the Prophet ﷺ says that you are not a believer. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من نفسي. That none of you is a true believer until I become more beloved to you than your own self. Why? Because we as flawed beings, we did not bring ourselves into existence. There's a famous verse from Surah Al-Tur that challenges atheism. It says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were the people created from nothing, or meaning they just popped up, the famous modern day atheist argument. There was an explosion, and then we've all evolved, and because of billions of years, things just kind of organized themselves naturally, right? That's the argument, right? So Allah's saying, think about that one. Does that make sense? Or amhum al-khaliqun, did you create yourself? And obviously the answer to both, for any rational mind, is no. Things don't organize themselves and bring themselves into existence without some intelligent force, right? Yeah. So Allah is challenging us to think about this point where we are in existence. So once we become aware of ourselves, we have to think, where did we come from? And what I'm talking about here is your classic philosophy ABC 1, 2, 3, right? But the Quran addresses it very methodically. You know what I'm saying, right? And if you want to tap a little bit deeper into the miracle of the Quran, were these the first ayahs revealed? No. So the way these ayahs were revealed were at different times and places and may have been understood, right, for different things. Actually, many of the scholars are saying that because there are people who are sinning and doing things in Medina, and they're having these hypocrisy issues that we've been talking about in the previous ayahs that come directly before in this, it's challenging them to think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, because they were created and they are responsible to their creator, right? And so that's the circumstance in which this ayah comes. But actually it's addressing every single person and the natural thought of, where did I come from? What am I doing? And where am I going? Right? But look at the ayah, right? If you go back, how do you disbelieve in God and you were once non-existent? He then gave you life. He gave you life and caused you to die. Then He'll resurrect you, and then where will you go? Back to Him. That's where you're going. You see what I'm saying? So that's a question that people who never read the Quran, that are big scholars of philosophy, that are not into religion because they think the human being should figure out their own reality, right? They've come up with these questions as the fundamental questions of understanding the nature of existence, right? Was the Prophet Muhammad a philosopher? No. Did he ever talk with philosophers? Did he sit with them? Did they have that concept in Arabia? No. So this is now, we're starting to see that Allah is the one behind this message. But if you go back to the previous ayah, right? فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. As for the believers, when they hear these things in the Quran, they know it's the truth from their Lord, right? Not just because of blind faith, but they pay attention to the very meticulous, methodical style of addressing the human reality as it tries to understand itself. It's giving it understanding so that it can understand itself. The vast majority of people who embrace Islam, they're not like, okay, I had this vision and Muhammad came to me and, or Allah told me, and, these are stories that anybody can have a dream, right? Do we know that that dream wasn't invented by you or the work of the devil? We don't know. It could be either way, right? But most people who convert to Islam, they study the Quran and they study the Prophet's life, and they're impressed by the rational guidance of how to live your life, the system, that's there, right? So, when Bob and Bill were devout Christians growing up, they got into alcohol, and the Bible has different accounts, some conflicting things. One says, drink and be merry, and then the other one says, don't get drunk, and the other one says, Jesus was turning water to wine at the wedding party, right? What a party animal, huh? We don't believe that he did that because it just isn't becoming, right? And so Bob and Bill became alcoholics, and they had big problems, right? Their whole lives were ruined. One was a very successful doctor, the other was a very successful attorney, one in like New York or Boston, somewhere in the New England states and all that. And their lives were ruined. They met each other in an insane asylum, right? And they were like, we went to church. Did you go to church? Yeah. Did you read the Bible? Yeah. Did it give you a system? No. My life's ruined, right? But if you look at what Islam teaches about how to avoid becoming addicted, it's not just a don't become addicted. There are certain teachings about who to be around, where to go, how to use your money, what situation to put yourself in and what not to. There's a full system. So right now we're talking about just the system of the very nature of belief. Before we get into the system of marriage and family and inheritance and all kind of things, right? So that's the beautiful thing about the Holy Quran. So we're here, and so we realize our existence. So the beginning, if you look in Surah Al-A'raf, right here in the 4th point, the beginning will be as mentioned, right? Remember when your Lord took a covenant from the descendants of Adam in which he asked them, am I your Lord? And they responded, yes, we bear witness. This is lest you say on the day of resurrection, we were unaware of this. What does this mean? This means that every soul is created, and before it's put into its mother's womb, it's given full consciousness, awareness of whatever it is around. And what we know about that is God somehow, in a way that suits His majesty and perfection, reveals Himself by word, by whatever, and communicates in some way to this soul, am I your Lord? And because this being, our souls, was never existing before, guess what all it knows? The voice. That before I wasn't here, and here it is. So that's my Lord, that's my Master, that's my Creator. That's the only thing that I really know, right? So that, we go into our mother's womb, and then we are born into this world, right? This is why the vast majority of people in the history of mankind have all believed in a supreme being, right? I mean, even if you go to India, they have the Brahman existence, the pantheistic presence of the ultimate divine in everything. And then they say, okay, well, over time, their culture, they decide, okay, well, we're going to fashion a statue, and we're going to draw that into one aspect of it and give it a name and all of that. But they do believe that there is one ever-present divine reality. Just over thousands of years, they have gone to polytheistic tendencies, as is most of mankind, right? Like Jesus came talking to the people, telling them His message, saying that God is bringing these miracles. Well, sometimes, after that, people trying to figure it out, the main people who were going to define His existence were Roman and Greek people, right? Well, Roman and Greek people have this concept of God coming down and becoming human. And so those ideas bled in with those ideas, and holidays were switched over. And that's how you see where people have gone with that attitude, right? And so we are all aware in our deep down soul that we have a creator. And that creator is the Lord, right? The master of all, right? That's why the word kufr in Arabic, if we say the English word cover, say cover. Then say kafara. You see? Sounds very similar. Because indeed the English word cover comes from the Arabic word kafa, right? And what it means is to conceal, to cover over, to suppress. So what kufr really is, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ, what our ayah is talking about right here is, what it's really addressing is that someone is trying to get rid of that thing that's ingrained in their soul, that that there is a creative force that brought me into existence, and there is a mystical, supernatural reality. Did any of you see Doctor Strange? Yeah, it has an interesting angle on that point. So the reality is that on the day of judgment, we will have no argument. There is no argument. So in the grave, what will our situation be? Right? So whenever he says, وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا, you were non-existent. You were not alive. فَأَحْيَاكُمْ, he gave you life, which is what? When you were born from your mother's womb. ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ, which is what? When you die on this earth, right? ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ, which is what? When you're resurrected from your grave. So between that point, there is something called the barzakh. As in the Quran it says, وَمِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ بَرْزَخٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Surah Al-Mu'minun. Okay, it says, and they will have in their reality a period of waiting until they are resurrected. And the Prophet ﷺ talked about that in various well-known transmitted hadith. In that person will be waiting in their grave. So what is the reality of the soul? When we die, angels will come to our body and they will take away the soul. For the person who was living a life of piety, seeking to please God. You know, that's what the Prophet ﷺ said, الدنيا ملعونة ملعون ما فيها إلا من ابتغي به وجه الله. That this earth is cursed, meaning it will all be destroyed. Everything in the earth will be destroyed except that which is done consciously to please God. Right? Meaning the human being who sees its purpose, realizes where it came from, and it seeks to live in reflection of that beautiful gift. Right? So that will bring the soul back to where? Heaven. And it will embrace perfection because it was embracing perfection while it was living in imperfection. Right? And so that's the nature of that reality. So the angels will come to the righteous one that was embracing that, and it will be an easy giving. Thank you. And then they will go up, and they will go up to the seven heavens and call out, this is so-and-so, the righteous person, son of so-and-so. And then God will say that person is written among the people of paradise. Take it back to the body. Then it will come back to the body. This is another hadith. And then, unfortunately, the rejecter, the person who rejects God, rejects prophethood, the person who lives a very evil, corrupt life, that person, the angels will rip the soul away from the body with resistance from the body and the soul, because the soul now realizes, right? See, in this life, people were not wanting to be accountable. That's why secularism is so powerful nowadays. People don't want to be accountable to a divine force. They want to be accountable to something on earth called the dollar bill, right? So that's what they're worshiping, and that's this earth, and that's its value, right? So whenever the death comes and then these angels come and be like, oh my God, you should have been saying that while you were alive.
Too late now.
Too late, right? Take life seriously. It is a big gift, and at the same time, equally so, it is a big test, right? And so then those angels will rip that soul away and go up to the gates of heaven and say, this is so-and-so, the corrupt rejecter, and so forth. Then they'll say, this person has no business here. Take it back. And then that person will go to the grave. So the righteous person in their grave, they will be seeing like visions of bliss. And they will be feeling like it's very spacious. And they will smell the most beautiful smells of fragrance. And they will feel in a perfect, weather temperature type thing. Very comfortable. And it will just be like that for however long, maybe 1,000, 10,000 years, until the angel Raphael blows the trumpet, and then everything is destroyed and brought back to creation, and then people are resurrected from their graves. Now, unfortunately, the person who will be in the hellfire, or a person that needs to be purified while they're in their grave and may go to heaven because they had the pure monotheistic belief in their heart, okay, that person will feel like they're always about to suffocate. You ever been in a situation where, like, underwater swimming, it's like, oh my God, I'm running out of breath? That person's going to feel like that permanently. And they're going to feel like things are really tight. Like when you're in an elevator and too many people get on, it's like, man, this is not feeling comfortable, right? It's going to be very hot. and they will see visions of the hellfire. So this is the reality of the punishment of the grave, right? So this is what will happen at that point, and this is something we should all pay attention to, because we don't know when our time is going to come. Creation is subjugated to mankind. So then right after he talks about the ultimate reality, now he's going to go back into proving why you should be grateful. Again, we did it before, right? الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً and so forth. Now we're going to come right back to this, because Allah, He wants to make His case. Look at this. He's the creator of the universe. Should He have to make a case? He should not have to make a case. But He is merciful, loving, compassionate, wise, and caring to us who have this. It says, وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ, right? That the human being will get into arguments without any clarity, right? Particularly when it's defending ourselves and what we want it to be. When we want something to be a certain way, we'll argue until the sunset, and it will make no sense, and it will not be on true facts with deep thought. It will just be defending my point. Okay? So it says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. He is the one who created all that is in the earth for your benefit. Right? Now, this verse is super deep. Right? And the way the Muslims took this verse was in very that much context, right? So when they heard that Allah said, He has made everything in the earth for your benefit, guess what many Muslims were doing as a result? Let's study. Let's figure out the mathematics. Let's study what's in this earth. Let's study chemistry. Let's start to figure out what's going on in this earth, because guess what? Allah created it for us. So you see how it was that Muslims invented algebra and trigonometry and the concept of, modern day chemistry, moving from alchemy, which is like potions and witch doctor stuff, and they moved it into a very well-defined scientific method. Science and medicine, the idea of medicine and keeping track of the human body and doing actual autopsies and making a very intricate record of these things. They were doing this because Allah told them. You see right here what Islam does. It brings a very direct connection between spiritual and God and our guidance and the worldly reality that we live in. There's a direct connection. From day one, if you look at the early Christian scholars, they were saying, we don't need any of that stuff. We have Jesus and God, and now we're holy, and that's it. We don't need any. If you read their works, they were saying, anyone studying science, you know how Galileo was treated? When people talked about science, it was like, no, everything's divine. So there's no need to study anything here, and all that stuff is hocus pocus. We don't want it, right? It was a very superficial, imbalanced way of looking at the world, right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Right? With this message, you are made a balanced nation. You don't go to one extreme or another. You're always balancing between things. You're always bringing in both sides of the story and coming to the natural, medium reality. Right? So He is the one that created. So in many verses of the Quran it says, سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. He has subjugated what is on the earth to your interests, to your benefit. When you say lakum in Arabic, it generally refers to possession, right? But possession is for your benefit, for something you can use. Why would you want to have something in your possession that is not in your interest, that you can't use it for benefit? So it's intrinsically implied that things were meant for our benefit. Now when we look, the Prophet ﷺ's companions, do you think that they reading this ayah would have thought we'd be sitting in this room right now looking at this? Yes, it's very reasonable to think that a sophisticated building with a recording device, with a projector, with chairs, all of that did not exist in the world, right? But the Muslims were the civilization that were working day and night as an act of faith to bring forth this because of these type verses that are found throughout the Quran, right? And if you look where Europe came in the Enlightenment, they were saying there were two things that happened. Number one, if you go that who was in the Ramadan program, Taraweeh program 2 years ago? Adelard Bath, right? We talked about the actual memoir of a British man who went to Spain, who went to Baghdad, who went to Cyprus for 25 years studying Arabic so that for the purpose he could become an intellectual. So he could learn math and science and astronomy and understand the sciences of the world because Muslims were at the forefront. So he brought back all that, and so did many others. This is just one guy's example. And he gives a very detailed memoir about it. And there are many examples where Spain Muslims and Baltic Turkish type Muslims and Baghdad and other Muslims and the Indian and the Persians, they affected. Well, what happened was they realized under the church rule, we can't grow like that. So secularism and the Enlightenment was to say, okay, all these ideas these Muslims been working on, we're going to take all that scientific stuff, but we're going to leave God out of the equation because God don't work for us. That's literally what happened, right? And guess what happened to the Muslims? They went back the other way. You know what I'm saying? They did what the Christians did, right? Before, right? And that's where you get a lot of people, anything coming up from the West, oh, that's haram. This is the West, you know, they're doing this over there, this and that, it must be haram. Anything they're doing, it's haram, right? This attitude, that science and all of that, because of the clash of civilizations mentality, which is not Quranic. The Quran, all of you have been made from male and female and made into tribes and nations to come to know and learn from each other, not to hate each other and have a standoff. Yes?
Whenever you were talking about how,
It's okay, think about it. Inshallah, we'll get back to it. No problem. It's good that you're paying attention. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So look here. This is a basis for the legal ruling, which says that the general ruling for all things is what? Let's all say it together. Permissibility. Right? All scholars of Islamic law, and I'm talking about scholars of Islamic law, amongst the madhahib, they're agreeing that the general ruling of everything is permissibility and purity. Right? Because why? Because of this verse and other verses like it in many hadith. Right? That the general ruling of things is Allah made it for your benefit. And Allah would not give you something that is impure for your benefit, right? So purity and permissibility is the general. So here is the realm of purity and permissibility. Here is the realm of impermissibility and impurity. And how do we know something is impermissible or impure? From the Quran and the Sunnah. So wherever the Quran and the Sunnah says, don't do it, or that's impure, wash yourself from it, we do that because that is how we know the exception to the rule. But how do most quote-unquote religious Muslims think or common Muslims think? Everything's haram and it must be impure. We can't pray here. Bring something because, it's got to be something here, right? That is not Islam, right? If you said, well, I don't want dust on my hands, you're not saying from Islam. You're saying I just want to have a clean hand or forehead. That's a different story. But to say it's not allowed in Islam, this is absolutely false. Whoever's saying that needs to go back and study the consensus of Muslim scholars on the matter, right? So that is the general ruling. Because everything was made for you on the earth, for your benefit, for your interest. So we were created with individual conscious purpose, while everything else was created as what? Sustenance. Rizq. So look, all there is this. There's creator, God, and then there's creation. Creation has two separate groups. There is the conscious being, and there is its sustenance. That's all everything is. Every single thing is rizq. Like whenever we talked about وَبِالنُّجُومِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ, right? And with the stars in the sky, we think, okay, some sort of physics or somebody who studies astronomy is going to say, well, stars, there's, billions of years, and there's all these, galaxies and stars and all that. Allah said, that's so that you can find your way around, right? That's what they did for thousands of years. People would map the stars, and they would say, well, now we know we're going north. Why? Because that's the North Star, right? And now we're going here. Well, because that's that constellation, and we're going here. They've been doing that for a long time, right? And then Allah blessed us with GPS. Right? Yeah. Easy? We don't need that anymore. But even that is, subhanAllah, when you think about it, it's like, subhanAllah, that great powerful creation, just so we can figure out where we're going. right? And so that is the nature how we should look at things. Everything here is a resource for us, right? Except for that which Allah said, that is not acceptable for you to use or to do, right? So there are studies that show, now this is, how many of you study quantum physics? MashaAllah, okay. So when you study quantum physics, it's a deep analysis of matter and how it functions and all that, right? So there is very overlapping different studies that show that when a human being is observing a certain, part of matter, it reacts differently than if we're not looking at it. You see what I'm saying? Now we're getting into some sort of mystical Sufi kind of thing right here. But I'm talking from a scientific standpoint. There is clearly an interesting connection between our perception of things and its existence and how it functions, right? And so, I don't know if you've ever been tapped into The Secret. You ever saw read the book The Secret? Or saw that Netflix documentary? Yeah, you can project interesting things onto stuff and it will come back to you, right? And this is proven or human behavioral patterns and how things happen, right? So for example, if you study the life of Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Edison or any of these people, or Leonardo da Vinci and all that, they were all certain that what they were going to do was going to happen. If you look, right? So Allah has connected us with creation with a certain connection in which it will serve our purpose. Remember the ayah, I'm not going crazy on you, right? It's in the ayah, right? Everything here is meant to, created for the purpose of serving our interests. If we focus with strong will, especially if we seek Allah's help, it's going to happen. And you should believe it, right? And nothing can stop Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Yeah. So that's some interesting point. You should, maybe if you go study it more, you'll see that it's actually a scientific fact. Okay. So, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ فَسَوَّاهُنَّ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ. In Arabic now we get into a little bit of a theological debate, right? It says, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى. Now, ثُمَّ means then. Istawa has various meanings, right? So if you look here, right here, ila, it's like to embark upon, to take, to intend to do something, to direct oneself, right? Ala is like this. Istawaitu al-kursi, right? You see? So I got on top of it. I ascended above it, right? So then, in general, whenever you say it, it just means to be like, you're ready to do it, right? So istawa dajjaj, right? It's been cooked right. It's not burnt and it's not raw. Istawa, right? You see what I'm saying? So this is the concept of istiwa, right? So here we're going to translate it here, and you'll see many translations, okay? Then he turned to the sky and made it into seven heavens. We have a Islamic theological principle that was learned in the time of Imam Malik. Imam Malik, he's to give you a little bit of clarity of history, he was in the tabi'in. He was born and raised learning from some Sahaba, but mostly people who learned from the Sahaba, right? And so he lived in Mecca and Medina, and so he became the great scholar of Medina less than 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ had passed away. Okay? And so he became the prominent scholar that everybody said, okay, to the extent that there's a famous statement, La yufti wa malik fil Medina. Nobody should give, and if I'm going to go visit, Yasser Khaldi's masjid or something like that, and somebody asks me a question, I'm going to be like, yeah, go to Sheikh Yasser, what are you asking me for? This is the guy you have here. It's not my business to be giving my opinion because I'm a foreigner, I'm out of here, right? So Imam Malik, he's sitting with his students, and so one of them, they came to these ayahs, and they're studying. He says, okay, كيف استوى Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How is Allah going up or moving in all of this, in this mindset, philosophical thinking, right? And he said, okay, الكلمة استواء معلومة باللغة العربية, right? والكيفية مجهول أو غير معقول, right? The way that would apply to Allah is something that is unknown to us or not understandable to us. Right? Why is he saying this? Because لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. The ayah is very powerful. I think it's in Surah Al-Fatir, if I'm not mistaken. Could be. But anyway, it's a famous verse where it says, there is nothing in existence like Allah. At the same time, He hears and sees everything. Meaning what? He doesn't have eyes, He doesn't have ears, but He has the ability to come to the... So do we know how He sees and hears?
No.
We do not. We do not. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is nothing like Him, right? So we cannot try to relate Him to anything that we know, right? So then the guy asked again, right? Now this part of the narration, there's some question about its authenticity, but I'm just going to give it to you so you can see where our scholars kind of look at this. So then the guy says, no, but it says, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ and عَلَى الْعَرْشِ اسْتَوَى and all that. He's like, how is that? It's, it doesn't seem right, right? And so Imam Malik supposedly has said, وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدْعَةٌ, right? فَخْرُجْ مِنَ الدَّرْسِ. And to ask about these things and try to nitpick, okay, so Allah said He has a hand or He has an eye, and so what that means is that means He's like human. La. It's a waste of your time, right? Allah is telling you something, that we have some rule, right? Al-murur alayhi bil-iman was-sukut, at-tafweed. We read it and we say, whatever God said about Himself is true. I do not understand it because I am a little speck of dust on earth. I'm not meant to wrap my little brain around God. It's just لا يحيطون بشيء من علمه. Yeah?
What if it's more of like a subconscious thought?
Yeah. That's natural. That's why in the famous ayah, he says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. So he's saying, what if these thoughts just pop in the back of your head and you're not intending, it just comes because you read the ayah. You just say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Just think about it that, okay, God is not human. God is nothing like a human. So whenever He said that, it means something, but I really can't pinpoint it. I mean, you have great scholars from the majority of the schools of interpretive methodology. They say, well, Arabic language, like if, for example, if I told Fahim, give me a hand, if this brother chopped out off his hand with a butcher knife and handed it to me, this would be a problem, right? We'd be like, what? He's like, that's what you told me, to give me your hand. You're the Imam, so I gave you my hand, right? No, I mean help me, right? You see what I'm saying? We all understand that I mean help me, right? So many scholars of the Arabic language who studied theology said Allah intends to mean something, right? Even some of the most strictest ones like Imam Ahmad, who was very strict about not saying things about Allah without clear knowledge from the Quran literal meaning, right? But whenever he was asked about things like وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ, right? And all that will remain is the face of Allah. So you mean the rest of Him got destroyed? Right? Clearly if wajh means nafsuhu, His exact, dhatuhu, right? His reality, right? You can't say part of Him got destroyed, right? Would that be acceptable? Nobody said, وَلَا تُصْنَى عَلَى عَيْنِي, right? That Moses was going to be raised on my eye. That literally, Abu Khalid's with me. Literally the ayah is saying that Allah said that Moses is raised on his eyeball, right? So for the literal crowd, this is going to be a tough one, to defend, right? Clearly it means بِرِعَايَتِي, تَحْتَ رِعَايَتِي, under my vision and care and concern and watchful reality, right? So there is clearly that there. But should we say for sure? We don't know. We're guessing, right? Let's not cancel something that could be that we don't know and is beyond our understanding, right? Yeah. Okay. Some scholars, they're trying to say here, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, that He created the earth first. Scientifically, will that hold up in a day in court? No. So, we don't say that, right? That's a fact of the way things came into being in existence, right? So, that's a scholarly opinion. You can address tafsir, and you will see many opinions there, right? But you do not take a tafsir of someone trying to interpret the way things are scientifically by what they saw in the Quran. Is the Quran a book of science? It is a book of science, as Zakir Naik says. Signs. S-I-G-N-S. Not S-C-I-E-N-C-E. Is there miraculous things in there? Yes. We'll see lots of things that are amazingly scientific, right? So basically you have other scholars that said, no, this is Allah talking to us from our perspective, and He's, in another ayah, He actually said that the وَكَانَ دُخَانٍ, that He created the heavens, which was like smoke, which if you study a nebula and how, the thing is going, it's actually very scientific. So, sawwa, in Arabic, right here, so if you see here where it says فَسَوَّاهُنَّ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ, this is the argument against which one was created. Does sawwa mean khalaqa? No. Sawwa means a specific way of arranging it, a specific way of putting it the way it is, right? So it's already there, right? There's already a sama. By fact of logic, anyways, because, if you're creating an earth, there's something above it, right? So the word when you say sama, Arabic, and you say, in old Arabic, they used to call this? Sama, right? It's saqaf became a word that they also used for it, ceiling. But kullama ala fahuwa sama, right? The Arabs said, anything above you that you can quantify is a sama. And then there's a sama and a sama, right? So, now, he says, فَسَوَّاهُنَّ, how many samawat? 7. Now, some of our modern scientists looked at this and said, wow, I've studied meteorology. We have the 7 atmospheric layers. So, the earth actually literally has 7 layers of actual atmosphere. You have these troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and so forth, right? These are the one that's directly where we're at, and then there's a one above it, and one above it, and they have different qualities, and they're quantifiable. So they said, see, this is amazing. Does that mean that that's for sure what Allah meant? It's interesting, but no, we don't know. At the end of the day, it's from the ghaib. It's from the unseen, what Allah is actually meaning here. And what we're saying is that there are certain things naqta' bihi. We say that's what it says. Allah is one. Is that an interpretation? It is made unequivocally clear that God is one. That is actually the first commandment of the Bible, of the Old Testament. Hear, O Israel, your Lord is one, and do not take gods beside him. Do not make graven images to God, right? So like modern Jews, when Christians are saying, yeah, we're monotheists, they're going to say, no, you are not. You are saying that this person was God, which is blasphemy according to the first commandment of the Bible, and you are making pictures and images of him and worshiping the guy, right? All that is against the very fundamental part of our religion that you say the guy was from. That's where he came from. So that is very clear, we don't question about it. وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ, right? So when we look at how he created things, he's just giving you an idea. Are we supposed to understand absolutely everything about it? No, it's not in our best interest to understand every little detail about it. Should we study it and try to understand it as best as we can? Of course we should, right? But whenever we get arrogant, oh, I've studied science and therefore this is what it is. And I go back to my point with the atheist crowd. It's a very big contradiction they have. If you talk to them in science, they'll say, oh, science is a realm that we've only begun to take a drop of water of the ocean. It's a grain of sand we've learned in science. There's so much to uncover. We're uncovering so much every day. And then you say, what about religion? Oh, that's false. We proved it wrong because I know science. Now, hold on, man. Malakum kayfa tahkumun. How are you making this like that, right? Before you were this humble seeker of knowledge and humbled in the sight of all the greatness of what could be and what you could learn. Right? When it comes to God, for whatever reason, which I'm going to say it's a political / desire-based issue, that they want to say, no, it's not real. It's all, because we know some things about science. Then if you ask them, do you know everything about science? No, I barely know anything about science. So how are you using your little knowledge that is still just cracking the surface to disprove something that you don't know about? Right? I'm just talking from a philosophical, scientific method standpoint. Yes, sister?
And where did the science come from?
And where did the science come from? Like, how did we quantify these things? And by which means, right? And when you go back to quantum physics and all that, it's a very interesting relationship to how we're understanding things and our relationship with it, which goes into a little bit deep. So I think that's it, inshallah. Any questions? Jazakumullah khairan. Allah bless us in His guidance.